Here we are again, ladies and gentlemen, back again. Prokaryotes versus eukaryotes. So yesterday, or the previous video, we talked about how cells can be classified by how many cells there are. So we know unicellular has one cell, and multicellular has many cells, and we are multicellular. Now we're going to talk about a different way to classify cells, and that's whether they have a nucleus or not. So we're going to go ahead and dive into that. Remember, our warm up was rate these cookies. Oatmeal raisin is the last answer, the last one. Here's our agenda. Remember, we talked about that bacteria is alive and viruses are debated amongst the scientific community as to whether they are alive or not, because they do not meet all 7 of the classifications that we're going to learn about during vocabulary today. All right, this was our prokaryote, and remember we'd said it kind of looks like a Twinkie, like a horse pill, like a sub sandwich. Um, this little guy is usually bacteria. Bacteria, remember we talked about yeast. So the thing that we wanted to pay attention to was the squiggly stuff inside, And you'll see here it says chromosome. Well, it's DNA. It's DNA. That's our genetic material. It's what makes us us. And notice how it's free floating. Remember our prokaryote DNA dance. It is free floating. So it is not kept inside anything. It's just chilling. Now we still have our cell wall, our cell membrane, and our cytoplasm. And hopefully those words sound familiar based off Wednesday's lesson. Now we're going to look at the eukaryote, and we decided this one looks more similar to the picture we looked at yesterday. So we decided that as a class, we are this left one, we are animal cells. And what we see in the eukaryote is that center, that thing that looks like the core of the earth. That is the nucleus, and you look inside, it's all the squiggly stuff. So plants and animals have our DNA kept in this tight little chamber, this little bubble organelle called a nucleus. So that is the difference, is that eukaryotes, plants and animals, have a nucleus and prokaryotes do not. So the way we remember that is pro equals no. Pro equals no, no nucleus. They're usually smaller. So if you think they replicate easily, so bacteria just spreads and spreads and spreads and spreads. The DNA is loose inside the cell. And we did talk about binary fission when we thought bicycle too. Fission is, fuse is to put something together. Fizz is to rip something apart. So binary fission, we remember it's the cut yourself in half. And here I am. There's another one. It's making a clone of yourself by simply cutting yourself in half. Super easy, super quick. That's why bacteria can take over our bodies so quickly. So pro equals no nucleus. Eukaryotes, like plants and animals, we are much more complicated. And we have a nucleus, but because all of our genetic material is inside this capsule, we have to do a lot more work to reproduce and make more cells. So that is why it's easy for bacteria to win, because it takes us longer to make more healthy cells than it does for them to split and make bad cells. But our cells are bigger. So they have to have a bunch of them, but because they're smaller, but they can make a bunch really quickly, and we can't. That's why when you get a scrape or a cut or break your bone, it takes a while for it to heal, because our cell reproduction takes a while. All right, so you do have a nucleus. You do. All right. Now, the activity that we did in class that day was vocabulary, and remember these are our participation. So we went into Clever, we selected vocabulary, and this is going to be the teacher view, but you guys had the student view where you could see under your assignments, you were given the cells assignment. And in that, we watched that video together, and for copyright reasons, I am not going to play it. But we did go ahead and review those vocab cards that were in there because we have talked about cell. All right, let me real quick here. Again, we're not gonna get copyright. So we had talked about cells, we have talked about DNA and the nucleus. And remember we discussed that organelles sound like organs, and we know that each of our body's organs does a different task, or a different job. So we remember that our organelles all do different jobs in the cell. So we've learned about a third to half of them, and we were just going to go ahead and play this game to introduce ourselves to the rest of that vocab because we're going to start working on that over the next few days. So stay tuned for cell wall and chloroplast.